Everyone, it's Yvonne here to do your What's Cracking reading. For today's reading, we're going to use the Green Witch Tarot, but my blurbs first. So thank you so much for your support, your love, your kindness. Welcome to new people, and thank you to the support of the people who've been with me for a long time. Please watch for scammers. Always really warning people now. So I think that most people are becoming aware, but I still hear about these multi-billion dollars we lose every year through scamming. So watch yourselves. If you haven't checked it out, don't go for it. Um, if you're unsure, you can email me if somebody's approaching you for a reading. You can email me at theaussiegoddess@gmail.com, but I will never solicit you, chase you, or try to get you to have a reading with me. I don't need to. If you want to make your mind up to have a reading with me, that's your choice. I do have now a membership on the channel, and thank you to the people who've already joined up. It's exciting to work with you. I've already put up a few videos on basically like knowing the tarot and knowing what cards are what, and we'll get into it, but we're going to take a bit of a climb because I think it's the best way to learn. I do try to put up, I'm going to try to put up at least 2 or 3 videos a week for you to go through. But I think for some people, like really focusing on that and going over what I've already done is probably a really, really good idea. I do appreciate some of you telling me your stories too, because I often will share, parts of my story on the channel. I used to be a little self-righteous and think it was the wrong thing to do to share things, but now I realize sharing is very different to oversharing. So if I feel a need to share something about myself, I do now. I feel comfortable with that. There was a sense of pride, I think, when I was younger, that I didn't want people to really know who I was and, the things that had happened to me. But as I've got older, I've realized that perhaps people can benefit from my stories. Okay, so I was talking about membership. So on the deluxe membership, you are privy to videos I'm doing on learning the tarot. I'm trying to run these exactly as I did the classes. When I did run the classes, I'd run them for I think about 5 hours, and by the end of it, people were reading quite confidently. So I'm going to try and do the same with this, but you can go back and rewatch the videos with that as well. All right, if you do want a personal reading with me, the Aussie Goddess, all one word, no abbreviations, no numbers, no letters out of whack, nothing. So the Aussie Goddess at gmail.com. I think that's everything. I will try in the next couple of weeks to get on and do a live. A lot of people have been saying to me, when are you going to come back do live readings? I'm hoping to get back to doing that as well once things sort of start picking up. All right, let's get into the reading. I know that's mostly what you are here for. All right, so we have the Three of Swords coming straight out. I've got to say, in this particular deck, the cards are sort of portrayed so beautifully. This is why I always recommend, if you're starting to read the tarot, to go for a card like the Rider-Waite, one of the variations on the Rider-Waite, only because it has very sort of strict, I don't want to say strict, it's not the right word. It has definite symbiology, colours, and things in that card that will help you work with the energies of that particular card. Once you get used to that, you can read any deck. It doesn't really matter because you always got that initial feeling of what came up in the very original decks. Some of these are portrayed so beautifully that I feel like they can miss some of the more sort of deeper meanings of the original card. So in the Three of Swords, we see 3 swords in a heart in the original deck. And it does denote that either something has come between 2 people, lack of communication, can be with the sword there, harsh words, but when the 3 swords are there, we know that 2 people have been pulled apart by the 3rd sword. So I feel like here, when that comes out in a reading, it's always there to sort of say to you, either you're still nursing heartache or heartbreak from a past situation, which sometimes is very difficult to get past, but it can also signify that you're through. So whichever way it goes for you, it's like, have you been through pain in the past that has still sits with you? Or have you sort of realized that you can let this go now and move forward? So we'll know by the next card. We have the High Priest coming through. So the High Priest is very much a card of tradition. It's about the old religious way. So it represents like church and government institutions, those sort of things. So when the High Priest comes around, I feel like somehow or another, this sort of feels like the energy of breaking with tradition. It might not be that you've broken with the church or you've broken with your religious ideas, not at all, but you may have broken with some traditional way of doing things. So for me, if you had a particular way of seeing things or a particular way of feeling things, and all of a sudden you've had a realization that perhaps you've learned to do it that way and maybe it doesn't fit you anymore, then what will happen is you break tradition and you move forward and you take on your own view or your own ideas of the way things should be done. Quick example, I used to think that somehow when people, and I talk about this a lot because it's a very definite idea of what self-righteousness is. So I used to think it was really bad when people littered or threw things out of their car, especially cigarettes and things like that, and I'd get really angry about it and I'd want to go over and pretty much give them their cigarette back or give them their litter back. I was so, could not understand why people would treat the world like they did. But then there came this point where I went, you know what? I can't be responsible for everybody. It's giving me a headache. It's stressing me out. Every time I get in my car, I'm looking for people doing the wrong thing, driving badly, doing. And then when I started working on what I call the self-righteousness narcissistic flea that I'd gained along the way somewhere, I started to realize ultimately I cannot be responsible for everybody in the world. I can only be responsible for myself. It doesn't mean I can't speak up or say something if I feel passionate about it, but I can't control what other people do. Control. So I feel like here, this is that sense of giving up on something or letting something go that you realize no longer serves you. See, it's part of your karmic energy here. Okay, so let's just have a look. So we have the Page of Wands coming through with the Knight of Wands and the Nine of Wands. So you're going in a cycle. You are moving out of it with that Three of Wands though, but you've got to learn to let go of something. It could be a person here. So it may be that you're hanging on to an idea of what could be because that's the only way you know how to think about it. Maybe you're hanging on to a person because you're trying to control the outcome of that particular relationship or that friendship, whatever it should be. But ultimately, we cannot control that. It's just out of our hands. We can't control other people. Once you sort of get to that realization, I think it's a huge one that you realize you can't do that. And I still watch other people doing it all the time. And I think, what is it? You need to control everything in your world around you so you can have a peaceful existence. Because ultimately, you will never have a peaceful existence if you look at the universe that way. So when we talk about letting go, those are the sort of things we're letting go of. We're letting go of this idea that we can control what other people do or control. I guess to a certain degree, the governments have control over us for peace sake because some people don't have those moral or ethical mechanisms within them. But still, if we had control, we wouldn't see crime, we wouldn't see abuse, we wouldn't see hatred, domestic violence, none of those things if we had that control. All right, let's get into this reading. That's very deep for today. All right, so I have here the Oak King, which of course is the Hanged Man in the traditional deck. We have the King of Cups, the Page of Pentacles, okay, and we also have the Page of Cups here. Now this could be somebody here because now I'm feeling we may be talking about controlling somebody else or trying to control somebody else's actions. Sometimes I've seen people in fairly new relationships and they meet someone and the person they meet has a certain way of doing things. And before you know it, the person they're with is starting to try to change that. You know, you can't spend as much time with your friends. You can't have the hobbies that you like. You can't go out without me. You know, when we're a couple, we've got to be together all the time. Those sort of ideas are not really functional in a relationship. So I think that there's a time where you sort of come to some sort of agreement on what is acceptable and what is not. But you need to do that at the beginning of the relationship, because if you accept someone with all their flaws, and then 6 months in you don't want to have those flaws, then you have to decide if that person's right for you or not. You cannot change them, and that's what seems to be happening here. Somebody around you seems to be doing something in a certain way, and I feel like here you're trying to understand how to control that rather than just being able to turn your back on it. I guess, the one thing that always comes to mind for me, and I do think that, so many people make this mistake when somebody goes into a relationship with someone and they tell you they won't have something a certain way. So say, for example, the person says, I don't want to get married again. You can't then go into the relationship and think that you can get them to marry you if that's what they've decided they don't want to do. Do people change their mind? I guess along the way some people do, but to me that's it's not really a red flag per se, but it's certainly something you need to take notice of, because I really feel strongly that there is somebody in your energy here who wants to do something a certain way and you are not in agreement with them. There seems to be some reciprocal relationship here. So it's obviously somebody you have some sort of bond with. It may be that your person's drinking too much. This is pretty much because the King of Cups is here. So, we see the King of Cups with that cup in his hand, and immediately I'm thinking maybe you don't want somebody to eat so much because you're worried about their health, or you don't want them to drink so much because you think they drink too much. So there's definitely this feeling here that you are trying to work out how to control that. Now, if it's a child, and we're talking about a child, slightly different energy there, because you do have some input into that. But ultimately, you can't control that. You have to appeal to that. All right, let's just keep going. All right, I have the Six of Pentacles. There we go. That's exactly what I'm talking about. I do have the Sun card. So I want to say to you, whatever's happening here, there does look like there's going to be a good outcome. And we do have the Holly King, which is the card of the Hermit. So to me, I feel like there's going to be a good outcome here, but maybe you need to approach something in a little bit of a different way. Because here, the Six of Pentacles for me is very much about reciprocal stuff. So, if you're hounding someone, yelling at them all the time, going at them all the time, you're probably not going to get the respect you need, and you're not going to get that person to respond. But there seems to be this energy here of appealing to something with that Six of Pentacles. Yeah, Ace of Swords. All right. Oh, Nine of Cups. Okay. So whoever I'm speaking to here, if this reading Five of Pentacles coming out, I just clarify that with the Eight of Pentacles. Could be somebody you're working with when the Eight of Pentacles comes out. I feel like here, ultimately, the universe is saying to you, this may take one of those really honest, open conversations. Maybe you're going around it the wrong way. Maybe you're not feeling you can speak up. Maybe you are feeling powerless in this situation. But there definitely feels to me that you may have to reconsider whether you're seeing it a certain way, your person's seeing it a certain way, and neither one of you are meeting in the middle. Because it's very much this energy of control, wanting to control the outcome, wanting to control the person. If you step back and realize you can't control, maybe there's a chance there that I just feel like I'm trying to think of a good example. And I remember a couple I was talking to some time ago, and when one of them got angry or upset, they would blurt at the other one and then disappear and shut the door so the other person couldn't get in. And of course, the other person would get really angry because they'd want to talk about what they wanted to talk about, and they would bang and crash on the door, and and all this sort of aggression would ensue. And I said to them, have you ever thought that not chasing them might be the answer here? So when they go off and they need time by themselves, maybe it's a good idea just to leave them to have that time by themselves and talk to them when they've come through. You can't talk to people when they're angry like that. You can't talk to people when they've been drinking. Those sort of things need to wait until you can have that open, honest conversation, but in a much more, you've got some beautiful cards here. So I think this will be a really good outcome. But I feel like you've got to approach the situation differently. Maybe this is a time to think of it from somebody else's point of view. I'm a processor. So if somebody has a go at me or gets angry with me or, spits it at me for whatever reason, I'm not very likely to respond. I don't respond because I just think, what has just happened? It's that autism in me that just says, I need to go away, think about this, think about how to respond. What am I going to do about this? And I go. So I'm the one that walks away. I don't necessarily close doors on people or anything like that because I'm much more mature about it now. I probably did that when I was younger. But now I will say to people, I need a little bit of time to think about that and I'll get back to you with an answer. And that's how I have to do it, because I don't always know what to say in the moment. So very often after I've gone away and thought about it, I come back and I say, look, I really understand what you're saying to me, but that's not how I'm feeling here, or this is not how it's affecting me. I don't think you approached it in a way that I can really respond to, but my ideas are, if that's what you're asking me, this is my answer. So we're all very different in that regard. So let's have a look and see what's going on here. So I have the Three of Swords. So there seems to be some pain around a situation here that I think is going to help you break a traditional way of doing something. It is part of your karma to understand that you've been cycling in something and you need to probably look at it from a very different point of view. I do think with the page and it could be a younger person you're dealing with here, absolutely. But I feel like it's time to take action on something here. I do have the Nine of Wands, so I know you're going round in cycles. So you may be saying, my child does this a certain way, and no matter how many times I've approached it, I can't seem to get through. But maybe you need to sort of step out of that traditional idea and maybe look at things from a different perspective. We do see that with the Hanged Man. The Three of Wands is here. So there's some really nice cards here about doing things in a very different way. But I think that sometimes we get so stuck in our idea of how things should be. It's very difficult for us to see another alternative. All right, let's have a look. It might be that you just have a really different view to someone and you just can't get on the same page. Like when you feel so strongly about something, and it's really hard sometimes to come to, there's no middle ground. That's what I'm at. There's no middle ground. And that makes it really hard to deal with somebody. It could be a parent figure we're dealing with here. Maybe you have a parent who only sees things one way. Oh, the Ringmaster of Scrutiny, discernment, clear vision, detail. So let's have a look at what the Ringmaster has to say to us here. It is card number 9. I do think too that a lot of us are finding out, like people have mental health issues, for example. So some people do things because it's a mental health problem. But if we're not seeing that early in the piece, we may think that person is just being stubborn or rude or nasty. But I think a lot of us are now allowing for some of those mental health disorders, ADHD being a big one for me, because I think that now we understand that not everybody thinks the same way as we do. There's a better reason for getting on the same page. The Ringmaster of Scrutiny is all about the details. So that would be the Ace of Swords energy. Look closely and pay attention to the smallest elements of what's being presented to you on your path. It's in these details, not the broad strokes, that you'll find the breathtaking beauty and perfection in what you observe. This ally is on your side to point to the deeper meaning of what unfolds in your life, and he reminds you that every moment counts. Staying present in this perfect moment, observing the minute things, leads you to manifest your highest good and greatest desires. Grand gestures are for others' times. It's the small acts that really count now. I do think that this is about observing your environment, like being discerning on what you act on and what you don't, being able to understand your own response and reaction, because we do get triggered by things that sometimes seem so small or irrelevant. We've all done it. I still do it with my triggers where I overreact to something and I have to stand back and say, was that an overreaction? Why did I overreact to that? What triggered me? And for a lot of us, it is that control. If you've had really controlling parents in your childhood, you may still respond to that. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. Have a fabulous day. Thank you.